My name is Mackenzie. I'm 27. And last Saturday, while seated alone in my Denver apartment, I watched my older sister's wedding detonate, not in person, but through a professionally filmed live stream that captured the precise moment her carefully curated fairy tale unraveled. Screams rang out, champagne shattered, and somewhere between gasps and glitchy video quality, I realized the pristine dream Bailey had orchestrated was fracturing in front of the entire internet. The footage cut out just as her expression shifted from shock to disbelief. 1,000 miles away, I was frozen too, not by poor Wi-Fi, but by the weight of knowing I'd seen every crack she refused to acknowledge. Before I walk you through the digital unraveling of a wedding that became headline-worthy chaos, comment below where you're tuning in from, and hit subscribe if you like stories where family secrets explode in real time. What happened to my sister isn't fiction. It's a reminder that sometimes, skipping the RSVP might be the best decision you ever make. Bailey and I had never been close in the conventional sense. We shared bunk beds, family vacations, and childhood birthdays, but connection wasn't easy. She was older by 3 years, and light years more polished. Where I was quirky, she was classic. I collected secondhand books and mismatched coffee mugs, she displayed awards and magazine-cut inspiration boards. In photos, Bailey beamed with perfect posture. I blinked, slouched, or showed up with glitter eyeliner I wasn't supposed to wear. Our shared bedroom was a war zone of aesthetics, her half spotless, adorned with soft pastel bedding and matching accessories, mine resembling a craft store after an earthquake. You could learn a thing or two from your sister, was a phrase I memorized by age 11. My mother would sigh, hand on her temple, adjusting the hem of my shirt before a holiday card photo. Bailey always wore what was expected: ivory sweaters, pearl earrings, ballet flats, standing beside me like a living contrast. Her kindness looked sincere, but I could feel the quiet victory underneath it. She didn't have to say she was winning. I already knew. Still, it wasn't all rivalry. We'd stayed up whispering about high school crushes. She taught me how to curl my lashes without burning my face. I comforted her when our parents went through their awkward separation phase, the one they pretended was just a temporary arrangement. But even our closeness felt borrowed. Temporary islands of warmth in an ocean that always pulled us apart again. After college, I made the unexpected move, relocating to Denver for a job offer that promised growth, independence, and a full break from the family bubble. My decision stunned everyone. My parents reacted like I'd chosen to backpack through war zones. "What about family Sunday dinners?" my mom asked, horrified, as if meatloaf and scrutiny were sacred rituals. Meanwhile, Bailey returned home post-graduation, becoming a second-grade teacher at the school she once attended, and quickly reconnected with Ryan Sullivan, a name synonymous with old money and country club politics. Ryan's family practically owned our entire county, or at least the parts with lakeside property and buildings named after ancestors. His mother chaired every philanthropic board. His father was rumored to carry more influence than most elected officials. Bailey re-entered his life at a black tie gala, where her name, pedigree, and perfectly symmetrical smile matched the mold they were casting. Once engaged, Bailey's wedding transformed into a full-time production. Every hour brought a flurry of group chat updates about cake tastings, seating charts, and bridesmaid group fittings. I watched from afar, sending appropriately enthusiastic responses to avoid drama. Then came the envelope, thick, cream-colored, sealed with gold foil. Inside, a handwritten card from Bailey read, "Saved you a spot as bridesmaid. Jessica's maid of honor, of course. Can't wait to see you." That final line hit like a paper cut you don't feel until later. Jessica, a college friend Bailey had known for 6 years, would hold the highest honor at the ceremony. Meanwhile, I, her only sibling, was offered a supporting role with a side of subtle exclusion. I forced a smile and called to accept. That's when everything fractured. What started as a quick clarification about bridesmaid dresses turned into something else entirely. I asked about styles. My mother's response was swift: "They're elegant, but very fitted. Maybe look into that diet I sent you last month before the fitting." I blinked. "You're telling me to lose weight to be in my sister's wedding?" Her tone turned sharp. "Bailey wants flawless pictures. And the photographer is charging by the hour." One jab led to another. Suddenly, we weren't talking about chiffon or hairstyles. We were unearthing years of buried tension. I expressed how I'd always felt overlooked. My mother brought up my erratic career decisions and dating history like evidence in a courtroom. Bailey joined in, defending Mom, accusing me of making her celebration about my issues again. I'd had enough. "Fine," I said. "I won't ruin the aesthetic with my imperfections. I'm not coming." I ended the call and cried until my throat ached. That night, Dad rang, offering a truce. "You can still watch it live. We're streaming for relatives overseas. Might be less stressful for everyone." I agreed, out of guilt, maybe, but also relief. No dress. No forced small talk. No sidelong glances from relatives pretending I was still finding myself. Instead, I'd attend virtually. A front row seat to a life I no longer fit into. In the days leading up to the wedding, my inbox filled with updates forwarded by my cousin Heather. Each message painted a clearer picture of the spectacle Bailey was assembling, one that had evolved from a family celebration into something closer to a royal summit. The guest list ballooned to over 300. There were rumors of hand-carved ice sculptures, a full orchestra flown in from Chicago, and custom-embroidered napkins featuring intertwined initials like a brand logo, but it wasn't the extravagance that struck me, it was the pressure simmering beneath it. Patricia, Ryan's mother, seemed to have opinions about everything. She questioned floral colors, criticized venue lighting, even vetoed the original officiant in favor of someone with more social presence. Heather whispered that Bailey spent more time pleasing Patricia than planning with Ryan. Every day brought another compromise, another piece of herself handed over in the name of becoming a Sullivan. The night before the ceremony, my phone buzzed with a message from Dad. He'd attached the Livestream link in a short note. Bailey says she wishes you were here. No apology. No acknowledgement of our fractured conversation. Just that. Still, it softened me a little. I went to sleep with an uneasy heart, unsure if I'd made the right decision by staying away. The morning of the wedding arrived with eerie calm. The sky over Denver was cloudless, the kind of clear blue that made everything feel sharper. I woke up far earlier than usual, maybe nerves, maybe guilt, and drifted around my apartment in a daze. For someone who hadn't planned to be seen, I still couldn't bring myself to attend in pajamas. I pulled out the navy dress I would have worn had I flown home. It still had the tags. I applied makeup with quiet care, curling my hair and choosing earrings I hadn't touched in months. If I was going to witness my sisters forever, from afar, I wanted to do it with dignity. Watching in sweatpants felt too dismissive, too detached. I wasn't physically there, but my heart would be. Then I transformed my space. I strung fairy lights across my bookshelves, lit the cinnamon-scented candle I usually saved for autumn, and arranged a tray with chocolate-covered strawberries, sharp cheddar slices, and crackers I'd bought for a party that never happened. A chilled bottle of champagne waited on the counter, something I'd been saving for the right moment. Well, this was as momentous as any. Cheers, Bailey. I murmured, lifting my glass toward the laptop screen as though she could see me. May your day be everything you've always wanted. The live stream was set to begin 30 minutes before the ceremony. I settled in early, fingers poised on the keyboard, glass in hand. But when I clicked the link, nothing loaded. A blank screen. I refreshed once. Twice. 10 times. Still nothing. 20 agonizing minutes passed before the feed sprang to life. The screen revealed a sweeping shot of a garden so immaculate it looked manufactured. White chairs draped in pale pink sashes lined up with military precision beneath an elaborate arch dripping with roses. The whole scene glittered. Crystal vases reflected late afternoon sunlight in fractured rainbows. It looked like something straight out of a bridal magazine, too flawless to be real. The camera panned, catching early guests as they took their seats. I spotted old family friends, a few former neighbors, and great Uncle Franklin, still pinching cheeks like it was 1995. My mother stood chatting with other women, the kind who wore pearls before noon and drank Chardonnay with lunch. She looked poised, as always. My father hovered nearby, adjusting his cuffs with a familiar restlessness I recognized from childhood recitals and forced brunches. Then the lens zoomed toward the bridal suite. Bailey sat at a mirrored vanity, her white robe cinched tight, veil draped behind her like a curtain. Her reflection shimmered beneath warm lights, but her expression stopped me cold. She looked stunning, objectively breathtaking, but brittle. The kind of smile that holds under pressure but cracks if you touch it. Behind her, the bridesmaids flitted about like anxious bees. Jessica checked her phone so often it became obvious something was wrong. Is something happening? Bailey asked, sharply. Jessica startled, stuffing her phone in her clutch. All good. Just checking the timeline. A glance passed between Jessica and another woman, a look I couldn't decode, but it made my stomach knot. Something wasn't right. The video jumped again, cutting to the groom's quarters. Ryan stood surrounded by groomsmen, shot glass in hand, tie slightly askew. His best man cracked a joke I couldn't hear, and Ryan laughed. But it sounded hollow, even through my laptop speakers. In the background, I spotted Patricia engaged in what could only be described as an aggressive whisper battle with the wedding coordinator. Her gestures were clipped, her expression rigid. The coordinator nodded furiously, clearly desperate to please. Static interrupted the feed again, this time for 15 full minutes. When the screen returned, everyone had taken their seats. The ceremony was moments from beginning. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a lace-trimmed handkerchief she probably kept in a clutch for moments just like this. My father adjusted his tie again. Beside them sat Ryan's family, perfectly composed and strategically positioned. The camera lingered on the awkward divide between the two groups, a silent, visual metaphor for everything brewing beneath the surface. Then, the music changed, and everything began. Soft string music filled the garden as the procession began. Bridesmaids emerged, linked arm in arm with groomsmen, gliding down the aisle with rehearsed smiles and identical bouquets. Jessica walked alone, bouquet clutched tightly, posture rigid, glancing around as though searching for an escape hatch. Then, without warning, the music shifted again. Everyone stood. My sister stepped into frame, framed by sunlight and lace, her arm looped through our father's. Her gown trailed behind her like a waterfall of tulle and crystal. The veil shimmered, catching every ray of light. She looked like royalty, composed, breathtaking, otherworldly, and yet, not quite present. I knew that face. I'd seen it during piano recitals and family barbecues, that frozen calm Bailey wore when everything beneath was spinning. Her mouth curved perfectly, but her eyes betrayed the truth. She wasn't glowing. She was bracing. They moved down the aisle, slow and ceremonial. The camera swept across the crowd. Ryan's side appeared stiffer than ours, stiff suits, stiff expressions, stiff posture. Patricia sat at the front, hands folded neatly in her lap, face unreadable. Behind her, a wall of carefully curated elegance, country club regulars with polished shoes and practiced charm. As the couple reached the altar, the officiant welcomed everyone with the usual platitudes about love, growth, and commitment. Bailey nodded along, hands trembling slightly as she held her bouquet. Ryan looked detached, polite. The kind of expression one wears at business dinners or award ceremonies, not at the start of a lifelong vow. I texted Heather. Is Bailey okay? She looks stressed. Heather, so much happening backstage. You have no idea. Ryan's mom nearly canceled the florist this morning. Something's brewing. I kept watching. The officiant read verses. Friends performed rehearsed readings. Bailey smiled at the appropriate moments, turning toward Ryan as the music swelled. When they joined hands, I noticed hers were visibly shaking. Ryan gave a reassuring squeeze, or maybe just a gesture for the camera. The camera zoomed in. Her engagement ring sparkled. The scene looked idyllic, but it felt like theater. Patricia leaned toward her husband, whispering something. He didn't respond. Jessica, clutching her bouquet, peeked at her phone again. Our father sat perfectly still beside my mother, who blinked back tears with the delicacy of someone performing sorrow for an audience. Technical issues hit again, always at the worst moment. The screen went black. By the time it flickered back, the officiant had already declared them married. Too late for the vows. Too late for Bailey's voice. Too late to see whether she hesitated. The kiss had just finished. The crowd clapped politely, and the couple turned to walk back down the aisle, newlyweds. On paper. Bailey's smile had returned, dazzling and camera-ready. Ryan waved like a local politician. But in the background, behind the happy facade, something was brewing. You could see it in how guests stood stiffly, how the two families continued avoiding eye contact. You could see it in Jessica's nervous fidgeting and the way Patricia's lips twitched each time Bailey glanced in her direction. Another message from Heather lit up my screen. Heather, you missed it. Ryan's mom tried to change the ceremony. Order again. Bailey is barely holding on. Also, rumor going around about Ryan. We'll call you later. Rumor? My stomach dropped, but there was no time to process. The live stream had moved on, now following the couple to a picturesque wooden bridge built for photo ops. Dozens of guests trailed behind like extras in a historical drama. The camera caught them in position, bride and groom centered, families arranged on either side. The divide had never looked clearer. The Sullivans bunched together, stiff and formal. Our side leaned in, trying to smile despite the undercurrent. Bailey stood between two worlds, trying to stitch them into something cohesive. The photographer called out, "Closer, please. Pretend you like each other." Polite laughter echoed. Everyone inched together, but it didn't look like unity. It looked like choreography. Jessica stood just beyond the group, glued to her phone again. Ryan's best man leaned in, whispering something. Jessica stepped back, visibly shaken. Her reaction wasn't caught by many, but the camera, bless its unwavering lens, captured every twitch of discomfort. Then came voices, not meant to be heard, but heard anyway. Patricia's words carried clearly through a wireless mic. The orchids were a waste. Nobody even notices the difference between Phalaenopsis and Cymbidium. They'll wilt before sunset. My mother's response, equally crisp, Bailey loved the orchids. It's her wedding day. Patricia didn't miss a beat. It's also our son's future. We paid for the flowers. Bailey froze in the center of the photo. Her gaze flickered between the two women, neither of whom seemed to realize she was standing right there. Ryan adjusted his cufflinks, oblivious. The tension was building, minute by minute. The camera followed them back toward the reception hall, through manicured hedges and white-tented walkways. As they disappeared into the glittering ballroom, I refilled my champagne, bracing myself for whatever came next. My gut whispered it wasn't over. The real show hadn't even started. The camera transitioned smoothly into the grand ballroom, a space transformed into a romantic fantasy designed for society pages and legacy-building Instagram posts. Crystal chandeliers glowed above round tables adorned with elaborate centerpieces. Rose gold cutlery gleamed beneath candles flickering in glass towers. A towering cake, easily 8 tiers tall, stood spotlighted like a celebrity in the center of the room. It was a dream, no, a performance. Guests flowed in like waves, murmuring politely as they found their assigned seats. But I noticed it instantly. The layout wasn't random. It was strategic. Our relatives were grouped together on the left side of the room. The Sullivans and their circle dominated the opposite half. In between? A no man's land of shared acquaintances and obligatory invites. Even at their reception, the couple existed. Between divided camps. At the head table, my father sat beside Ryan's dad, both looking deeply uncomfortable, 2 men bound together by ceremony, not connection. Across from them, Patricia gave directions to the waitstaff like she owned the venue. Bailey arrived minutes later, arm in arm with her new husband, her smile returned to full power. But anyone watching closely, and could tell it took effort. I texted Heather again. Me, that seating setup? Cold War vibes. Heather, you have no idea. Ryan was 2 hours late to rehearsal dinner. Drunk. Huge argument after. His mom made Bailey rearrange half the reception plan. That explained the tension. The meal began. Salads arrived unpolished. China. Champagne flutes sparkled. Conversations buzzed beneath soft jazz. But my focus stayed locked on the bridal party, where the undercurrents couldn't be masked by expensive wine or forced toasts. The best man rose first. A fork tapped glass. Feedback squealed. He swayed slightly, a clear indication he'd been enjoying the open bar since cocktail hour. Microphone in hand, he grinned like he was about to deliver a stand-up routine. I've known Ryan since college, he began. Back when he was still trying to figure out how to flirt without quoting action movies. Nervous laughter. Bailey, you're marrying a legend. Just keep him away from Vegas and don't let him pick the honeymoon spot, unless you enjoy cancelled reservations and mysterious phone calls. No one laughed. Patricia's jaw clenched visibly. Ryan raised his glass, trying to chuckle along, but even through the screen, I saw the flicker of irritation in his eyes. Bailey's expression hardened. The best man concluded his awkward speech with a wink and a stumble back to his seat. Next, Jessica stood. Her posture stiff, voice measured. Every sentence carefully crafted, devoid of warmth. I've known Bailey for years. She's generous, determined, and has the biggest heart of anyone I know. Ryan, you're lucky. She didn't look at him once. Her toast ended abruptly, like a speech cut short for fear of revealing too much. As the main course was served. Filet mignon or sea bass, I assumed. The camera swept across the room. Ryan chatted animatedly with his college friends, while Bailey sat quiet, pushing food around her plate. Her gaze drifted toward the cake, then toward Patricia, who was deep in conversation with a stern-looking older man I didn't recognize. Then I saw it, near the dessert table. Patricia cornered Bailey. Their exchange wasn't captured directly, but their gestures told the story. My sister's body stiffened. Her shoulders tensed. Her smile, once again, slipped out. I texted Heather without looking away. Me, what's going on by the cake? Heather, power struggle. Bailey wanted parent dances before cake. Patricia is insisting Ryan's godfather gives a speech first. Whole schedule's off. The screen returned to the head table. Jessica was now speaking with someone at the side entrance, a server who handed her a plain white envelope. She opened it. Whatever was inside changed her posture instantly. Her face drained of color. Her grip on the envelope tightened as she darted to the wedding planner, whispering fast, gesturing toward Ryan. The planner shook her head. Then pointed discreetly at Patricia. Something had just detonated quietly. I could feel it, even from Denver. Another message from Heather buzzed. Heather. Something weird's happening. Jessica is freaking out. Wedding planner's panicking. No clue what's in the envelope. Before I could reply, the DJ's voice cut through the air. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and welcome Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan to the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. The lights dimmed, the music began. Bailey and Ryan stepped forward, a perfect couple, framed by chandeliers and soft petals strewn across polished marble. The opening notes of Perfect by Ed Sheeran filled the hall. They swayed gently, the world around them fading into a carefully choreographed moment, but even through the screen, I saw it. Bailey wasn't present. Her eyes searched his face, not for love, but for truth. Ryan smiled, but his eyes? They kept flicking toward the main doors. He was waiting for something. Someone. As the song ended, the applause barely had time to start when the DJ returned to the microphone, and now, a surprise arranged by Mrs. Patricia Sullivan, Bailey. Froze mid-step. Ryan's smile vanished. Patricia stepped forward, elegant, composed, satisfied. The storm had officially begun. Patricia took the microphone with the smug grace of a woman who'd rehearsed this moment in front of gilded mirrors. Her voice rang through the ballroom like a polished dagger. Marriage, she began, is a journey full of unexpected delights. And today, we have a special tribute to celebrate Ryan's path to finding his true partner. Bailey stood frozen at center stage, her hands limp at her sides. Ryan's expression curdled, the kind of uneasy half-smile someone wears when realizing the spotlight has just become a crosshair. A screen descended from the ceiling, the lights dimmed further, her music swelled, upbeat, familiar, safe. Mary. You by Bruno Mars. It began innocently. Baby pictures. Ryan's toddler years, his awkward middle school smile, high school football victories, college move-in day. Laughter echoed across the room as guests recognized milestones. Bailey chuckled softly at first, her posture relaxing ever so slightly, until the photos changed. A new face appeared. A blonde. First, she was just a background presence, part of group shots, seated beside Ryan in casual frames. Then more intimate frames followed. The two of them embracing at parties, exchanging smiles across candlelit tables, leaning into each other during a ski trip. Bailey's brows furrowed. Her shoulders squared. Still images became damning memories. One photo showed them kissing at what looked like a winter formal. Another captured them tangled on a beach towel under a banner that read, Spring Fling 2024. Then came the time stamps. Christmas, just last year. Valentine's, mere months ago. The captions were subtle, but their implications were deafening. Whispers rippled across the room. Ryan reached for his champagne. His hand trembled. Jessica bolted toward the AV booth, trying to wave someone down. She was intercepted by the planner, who grabbed her elbow and pulled her aside. Panic bloomed. Then the final slide appeared, the same blonde, alone now, holding a sign written in black marker, Congrats, Ryan. Call me when you're ready for the real thing. Love always, Diana. The screen faded to black and the room detonated. Bailey didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the screen, as if trying to will it into revealing a lie. Ryan's glass hung midair. Patricia stood smugly to the side, folding the microphone into her clutch. From somewhere near the bandstand, my father stood halfway. Guests turned their heads. Murmurs swelled like a wave about to crash. Bailey's voice sliced through the room, low, steady, devastating. Who is Diana? Ryan finally blinked. A girl I knew in college, he muttered. Nothing serious. Patricia stepped in. Diana Winters. From the Greenwich Winters. Her father owns the shipping conglomerate. They were practically engaged before this arrangement. My mother rose slowly from her chair. This arrangement, she repeated, voice shaking. They've been planning this wedding for a year. Patricia gave a tight smile. Sometimes families need to course correct. Bailey's head snapped toward Ryan. There was a prenup? He flinched. It wasn't finalized. The color drained from my sister's face. You never told me about any agreement, she said slowly. Ryan's mouth opened. Closed. Patricia jumped back in. There's a lot to discuss, she said, stepping forward, reaching for Bailey's arm. This has gotten out of control. Bailey recoiled. Jessica was at her side in a heartbeat, whispering something in her ear. Bailey's eyes widened. She's here, she asked, barely audible. Jessica nodded. The room fell completely still, and then the entrance doors creaked open. A woman stepped into view, blonde hair glossy under the chandeliers, wearing a red satin dress that hugged her frame like a scandal. Diana. In the flesh. Behind her trailed a man in a charcoal suit, the Sullivans' corporate lawyer, holding a manila folder, documents, the prenup. I pressed my palm against my laptop screen. I wanted to crawl through it. Stand between Bailey and every single person in that room. Instead, I watched as the trap door opened beneath my sister, and she began to fall. Diana walked into that ballroom like she owned it, not just the room, but the people in it. The red dress she wore wasn't just a fashion statement, it was a declaration of war, of confidence, of calculated timing. Behind her, the Sullivan family attorney clutched a thick manila folder, eyes scanning the crowd like a man about to detonate a legal bomb. Bailey stood motionless at the center of the dance floor, her wedding gown pristine, her face unreadable, while Ryan took one slow, backward step toward Diana as though drawn by gravity he no longer controlled. The guests turned in their seats like spectators at a slow-motion car crash, every eye bouncing between bride, groom, and interloper. Diana's voice, cool and practiced, rang out with terrifying calm. Ryan, your mother said you were making a mistake. That you were scared. She asked me to come. Bailey's head swiveled toward Patricia so fast it was a miracle her veil didn't snap loose. You called her, she asked, voice cracking but audible. You invited her here? Patricia, entirely unapologetic, adjusted her designer jacket and gave a small, measured nod. Diana has been part of our family for years. She understands what it means to carry the Sullivan name. She fits. Bailey's lip quivered, but her spine straightened. And what am I, then? She asked, voice rising. An experiment? A placeholder until the blonde princess agreed to show up again. Ryan opened his mouth, but Patricia was faster. Legacy matters more than love, she said crisply. Our family has spent generations building something that cannot be jeopardized by poor judgment or rushed decisions. Diana is from our world. She knows how to represent it. My mother, who had been silent through most of the madness, stepped forward now, her voice shaking with fury. This is not a merger. This is a marriage. Or it was. Ryan's father, stony-faced until that point, finally spoke. This union was always complicated. We tried to respect Ryan's wishes. But business realities remain. Bailey turned to Ryan, desperation creeping into her expression. Tell me this isn't happening. Tell me you didn't know she was coming. He took a breath that looked more like a stall. I didn't know about the slideshow, he mumbled. I didn't think she'd actually show up. So you? Knew it was possible, Bailey replied, her voice hollow. You didn't tell me because some part of you wanted her here. Jessica stepped up beside Bailey and pressed something into her hand, the envelope she'd received earlier. Bailey opened it with shaking fingers. Hotel receipts. Room service charges. Names of resorts. Signatures that weren't hers. Her eyes scanned faster. Each line another betrayal. You've been seeing her, she whispered. During our engagement? Ryan tried to protest, but it was too late. Bailey raised her voice. While I was planning this wedding, this circus, you were spending weekends with her. Ryan stepped forward, hands outstretched. It's not what you think. My family pressured me. I was caught in the middle. Bailey stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You were in the middle, she said. I quit my job. I dyed my hair. I turned myself into the version of me your mother approved of, and you were busy booking spa weekends with your ex. Patricia spoke again, this time with less finesse. That ring you're wearing? It's a Sullivan heirloom. It was never meant to leave the family. Bailey looked down at her hand, slowly turning the massive diamond on her finger. So I guess it's not mine either, she said softly. Ryan's brother chimed in from across the room, loud and indignant. That's right. It belongs to our grandmother. Give it back. My father stood now. Touch my daughter and I swear to God, but he didn't get to finish. Ryan's father moved to intercept Bailey, possibly to retrieve the ring. Bailey didn't flinch. Instead, she yanked it off her finger and threw it across the room. It hit the edge of a champagne fountain and disappeared with a splash. Gasps filled the air. Bailey's voice, louder than ever, cut through the chaos. You want the ring? Dive in and fish it out. Just like this marriage. Shiny on the outside. Rotten underneath. Patricia tried to say something, but my sister raised her hand. Don't. You don't get to speak anymore. None of you do. I walked into this thinking I was joining a family. Turns out, I was applying for a job I didn't want, with conditions, expectations, and a list of sacrifices long enough to be its own vows. Diana took a step forward, pretending concern. Bailey, honey, maybe take a breath, don't. Honey me, Bailey snapped. You showed up here like a villain in a soap opera with your red dress and smug smile. You didn't just ruin a wedding, you exposed it for what it really was. A lie. And I'm done pretending otherwise. The silence that followed was thunderous. Not a single fork moved. No one breathed. Then, like something out of a movie, Bailey reached for the bouquet on the head table, the one Patricia had arranged. With perfect aim, she hurled it directly at Ryan's chest. It burst on impact, petals scattering like confetti at a funeral. That was the moment everything fell apart. A waiter tripped backward. A tray of crystal flutes smashed on the marble. Diana shrieked as her heel caught on a chair leg, tearing her dress up the side seam. Guests scrambled. Voices shouted. But Bailey stood still, radiant, breathless, defiant, and not broken. Not anymore. The moment Diana's gown split, a gasp ricocheted across the reception hall, but even that couldn't drown out Bailey's next move. She didn't flinch, didn't stumble, didn't blink, she simply walked past Ryan like he was invisible. Her wedding train dragging through broken glass and spilled champagne. Jessica rushed to her side, wrapping an arm around her waist, steadying her like a guard protecting royalty. My mother pushed through stunned guests and joined them, her face drawn but determined, her eyes locked on Patricia with a fury I'd rarely seen. Patricia, for her part, looked as though someone had upended her chessboard mid-match, mouth slightly open, eyes darting from Bailey to Diana to the crowd who had stopped pretending not to record everything. Phones were out now, everywhere. capturing every step, every frozen expression, every scrap of drama still unfolding like the world's slowest train wreck. Ryan turned, stammering half-formed sentences, holding out his hand toward Bailey as if he still had a claim on her. "Wait, we should talk," he said, soaked tuxedo clinging to his chest, hair disheveled, glassy-eyed. "Don't walk out. Like this. Not in front of everyone." Bailey stopped, pivoted halfway, and for the first time that evening, really looked at him. Her voice dropped to a low simmer, every syllable sharp and deliberate. "I gave up who I was to become your perfect bride. I erased myself to fit into your family's photo albums. I silenced my doubts, ignored red flags, and believed your lies, because I thought you loved me. But this?" She gestured at the wreckage, at the guests gawking, at Diana standing like an uninvited queen holding court in the middle of devastation. "This is what I get in return." Ryan opened his mouth, but before he could utter a single excuse, Bailey continued. "I used to think I wasn't enough. That no matter how much I accomplished, I'd never be worthy in your world. But now, I see the truth. Your world isn't worth entering. It's hollow. Decorated with illusions. Built on appearances. And I don't belong there, because I still have a soul." She turned away again, this time heading for the exit with a pace. That said, she was done waiting for anyone's permission. Diana tried to speak, but Patricia stopped her with a subtle shake of the head, realizing perhaps too late that they'd lost control. Ryan's father began barking at the lawyer to collect the papers, muttering about public relations fallout and liability. The planner stood frozen, headset dangling, mascara streaking beneath one eye. Meanwhile, Ryan's brother, clearly drunk and desperate to salvage something, lunged toward Bailey, shouting, "That ring belongs to our family. You can't just throw it away." Jessica stepped between them like a bodyguard. With the reflexes of someone done being polite, she jabbed an elbow into his ribs. He stumbled backward into a tower of stacked dessert trays, sending eclairs and macaroons flying like sugary shrapnel. Gasps turned into screams. My father arrived just in time to pull my mother and sister through the frenzied exit, shielding them as servers tried to contain the chaos. Someone yelled about fire hazards. A waiter slipped on spilled frosting. Diana screamed again, not from pain, but from humiliation as the camera zoomed in on the rip slicing up her thigh like poetic justice. And through it all, Bailey kept walking, her head held high, her veil torn slightly at the shoulder, but her presence regal. Before she stepped through the ballroom doors, she turned one last time, locking eyes with the Livestream lens, as if she knew I was watching. Her stare wasn't a plea for rescue. It was a message. "I see you. I know you were right." Then the screen flickered. Froze. Stuck on a frame of Bailey framed by destruction, like a painting of a goddess walking away from the ruins of her own coronation. I sat on my couch, unable to breathe, unable to blink, hands trembling as I tried to refresh the stream. Nothing happened. I reopened the browser, switched devices, ran through my usual troubleshooting rituals. Still frozen. Just Bailey's face. Streaked with tears, smudged lipstick, torn lace at her collarbone, staring directly through the screen at me, like she'd walked through the fire and emerged changed. I stared at that image for what felt like hours. My sister, the one who had spent her entire life polishing herself into someone else's idea of perfection, was now stripped bare, exposed, and finally, free. And though she hadn't said a word to me directly, I knew what she was thinking. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. The live stream never resumed. For 3 long, agonizing hours, I sat alone in my apartment still wearing the navy dress, staring at the unmoving frame, my sister in her ruined wedding gown, the chaos behind her frozen mid-motion, a single champagne flute paused mid-topple like the universe had hit pause on purpose. I called every number saved in my phone. Heather didn't answer. My parents' devices went straight to voicemail. I messaged Jessica. I tried the venue. Nothing. Just silence, thick and punishing. The clock crept past midnight, but I didn't sleep. I wandered around the apartment, still in heels, my untouched plate of chocolate strawberries now sticky and congealed, a champagne flute still half full but warm. I replayed every frame I could remember, each second of the video like puzzle pieces I tried to make sense of, wondering if I should have been there, wondering if my absence had made it worse, or perhaps, just maybe, had spared me from imploding alongside them. At 1:43 a.m., my phone finally vibrated. Heather's name lit up the screen. I snatched it up before the second ring. "Is she okay?" I blurted, not even saying hello. "Bailey, where is she? What happened?" Heather didn't answer right away. I could hear background noise, doors closing, someone crying, a siren in the distance. "She's safe," she finally whispered. "At your parents' place. But it's bad, Kenzie. Way worse than what you saw." "The stream cut off right after she threw the bouquet," I said, already pacing again. Then nothing. Heather exhaled a sharp, shaky breath. You missed the part where Ryan's brother tried to stop her from leaving. Tried to grab her by the wrist. Your dad stepped in, and it turned into a full-blown screaming match. Security had to break it up. The police showed up. I stopped pacing. The police? No arrests, she added quickly. But there were threats. Lawyers everywhere. Patricia tried to confiscate guests' phones. They wanted to control the narrative. Ryan's dad demanded everyone delete videos. Total PR panic. I collapsed onto the couch. And Bailey? In shock. But not broken. She left on her own terms, Mac. With your mom and Jessica. She didn't cry until she got home. I squeezed my eyes shut, guilt hammering through me. Should I have gone? Would anything have changed? You watching from afar was the only reason someone saw it all clearly, Heather replied. Everyone else was caught in the middle of it. You weren't. Over the next hour, she walked me through what I hadn't seen. How Bailey had been unraveling for weeks, constantly shifting her personality to match Patricia's ever-changing expectations. How she'd stopped speaking to several close friends who questioned Ryan's behavior. How the Sullivan name had slowly replaced her own, one social function at a time. And how the final straw hadn't even been Diana's appearance, it had been that slideshow. That calculated unveiling of secrets. That digital dagger disguised as a tribute. The plan, Heather revealed, had originally involved Diana interrupting the ceremony itself, speak now or forever hold your peace, but she'd gotten cold feet. Until Patricia sent the final push. I listened in stunned silence as Heather described how Jessica had uncovered the financial paper trail, the hotel receipts, the plane tickets. Ryan had promised to explain it all later, after the ceremony. He'd asked her to keep it quiet. But when Jessica saw Diana walk in red, she panicked. She handed Bailey the envelope too late to prevent disaster, but just in time to ignite it. As Heather recounted every detail, I felt something shift inside me, a mix of rage, protectiveness, and something darker, the realization that Bailey had been walking a tightrope above fire for months, and no one noticed. We all thought she was happy. She smiled in every photo. She posted updates about dress fittings and cake samples. She sent holiday cards with Ryan's arm around her waist. But beneath it, she'd been unraveling quietly, hoping the fairy tale would catch up to the truth. And it hadn't. It never would have. Be why the time morning light filtered into my Denver apartment, I hadn't slept. My laptop sat open beside me on the couch, still displaying that final frozen frame, Bailey's tear-stained face caught in a moment that felt both cinematic and horrifyingly real. Every few minutes, I clicked refresh. Out of reflex, hoping the video would restart, as if watching the catastrophe unfold a second time would make it easier to process. At exactly 8:12 a.m., my father's name appeared on my screen. I answered on the first ring, barely managing a whispered, "Dad?" He sounded exhausted. "Mackenzie," he sighed. "She's okay." Shaken, angry, but okay. "And before you say anything, you were right. All along." I blinked. I never said I didn't trust Ryan. I just didn't want to be involved. "That instinct saved you," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "And probably helped your sister too. Watching you walk away gave her permission to stop pretending she was happy." I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, guilt still clawing at me. "How is she now?" "Home," he said. "Refusing to speak to Ryan. Won't touch her phone. She hasn't slept either, but at least she's out of that nightmare." My father lowered his voice. "Between you and me, I think she's known for a while this wasn't love. But she was in so deep, she didn't know how to get out without setting everything on fire." "Turns out, fire was exactly what it took," I murmured. Hours later, my sister finally called me herself. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been screaming underwater. "Kenzie," she said, skipping any formal greeting. "I owe you the biggest apology." "No," I cut in. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do," she insisted. "You stayed out of it, and I took that as abandonment. But really, you saw what I didn't. You saw the cracks before I even admitted. They were there." I closed my eyes. I wish I'd spoken up louder. "And said what?" Bailey asked softly. "That my fiancé was a liar? That our parents were enabling an emotional hostage situation dressed in designer gowns? That my future mother-in-law was plotting corporate marriages like Game of Thrones?" I snorted despite myself. "Okay, when you put it like that. No, really," she said. "The truth is, I chose this. I walked into that family willingly because I thought I could survive it. Thought I could change enough to be accepted. But no matter how much I twisted myself into their mold, I was always going to be wrong for them." There was a long pause. "But last night, something shifted. When I saw Diana walk in, when I saw Patricia standing beside her like she'd just completed a successful hostile takeover, I realized it wasn't me who failed. It was them. They failed to see who I really was. And I finally stopped caring. I stayed silent, letting her speak without interruption. I'm still angry, she added. Still humiliated. I still want to scream every time I see that slideshow replay in my head. But weirdly, I'm also relieved. I feel like I've been carrying a weight so long I forgot what it felt like to walk without it. You don't have to carry anything alone anymore, I said. Not with me here. She inhaled shakily. Thank you. I mean it. That evening, my mother called to update me on the legal chaos. The Sullivan family had already begun threatening lawsuits over defamation, insisting Bailey return all wedding gifts and sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing her from ever speaking publicly about the event. Can they do that? I asked, stunned. They're rich enough to try anything, she replied bitterly. But they underestimated one thing. What's that? We have the Livestream file, she said. And your sister's not signing a damn thing. Later that night, Bailey sent me a text. It was a screenshot of a message from Ryan, one final, pathetic olive branch. I was under pressure from both sides. I didn't want to hurt you. Can we meet and talk things through? Her reply? Just one word, no. The following morning, I booked a one-way ticket home. I'd watched from the sidelines long enough. This time, I wasn't going to let my sister walk through the wreckage alone. The flight from Denver to Cincinnati gave me 5 hours to rehearse what I'd say, apologies for not being there, reassurances that I wasn't judging her, awkward jokes about wedding disasters and how we'd laugh one day, but none of it mattered once I saw her. Bailey stood at the arrivals terminal in sweatpants and a hoodie, her hair pulled back in a loose bun, no makeup, no pretense, no facade, and when I dropped my carry-on and wrapped my arms around her, she melted against me like someone finally allowing themselves to collapse. I've got you, I whispered, my hand cradling the back of her head. You're safe now. Our parents' house had transformed into crisis headquarters. The dining table, once reserved for Sunday roasts and family arguments, was now buried beneath stacks of paperwork, the unsigned prenup, printed screenshots of Diana's texts, wedding contracts, attorney contact cards, and formal complaints. My mother fielded phone calls from furious relatives and nosy neighbors, her tone sharp, protective, unrecognizably fierce. My father hovered like a watchdog, pacing between legal consultations and urgent coffee refills. That night, after everyone had finally gone to bed, Bailey and I sat on the porch swing where we used to dream about escaping town. The summer air was thick with crickets, the kind of quiet that demanded truth. You were always right, she said eventually, staring into the darkness. I was just too proud to admit it. I wasn't right, I replied. I was just loud. There's a difference. She gave a hoarse laugh. Still, you saw it. The way they controlled me. How I started disappearing in small ways. She gestured vaguely toward her body. My job, my friends, even my hair color. All gone by the time I walked down that aisle. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. Patricia told me blonde's photograph better. Said I'd look more polished in the press. So I went to her stylist. Paid for the color myself. And when I looked in the mirror afterward, I didn't even recognize the woman staring back. But I smiled anyway. Because being liked by her felt like oxygen. She's toxic, I said. You don't need her approval. I know that now, she whispered. But I didn't back then. And every time I doubted Ryan, when he canceled plans, when he refused to introduce me to certain people, when I found that hotel receipt he claimed was for a business conference, I made excuses for him because admitting the truth meant facing how far I'd let myself fall. I turned toward her. Bailey, do you regret it? The wedding? She shrugged. Yes. And no. It destroyed me. But it also saved me. She picked at a loose thread on the hem of her sleeve. That moment, when Diana walked in and everyone turned to look at her like she was the bride, I realized I was never the main character in my own story. I was just a stand-in. A placeholder until someone more suitable arrived. And I'd let that happen. Her voice cracked. But not anymore. We sat there in silence for a long time, swaying gently as the wind rustled the trees. Eventually, she looked at me again, her expression calmer. You know what the worst part is, she said. They're already rewriting it. Patricia's telling people I had a meltdown. That Diana was a supportive friend who just happened to show up. That I threw champagne and cake because I was unstable. I felt my blood pressure spike. You're kidding. No. She even called the foundation. Said I'd acted unprofessionally and might not be a good fit anymore. You were humiliated on your wedding day, by them, and now they're smearing you. Exactly, she whispered. But I'm not letting them win. She turned her eyes to mine. I need the footage. You saved the live stream, right? It's on my laptop, I confirmed. It doesn't capture everything. But it shows enough. Diana's entrance. Patricia's speech. That horrible slideshow. Bailey straightened. Good. Then I have proof. And they can't spin this into their version of the truth anymore. 3 days later, Bailey sat across from the Sullivan family inside a mahogany-paneled law office, the kind with framed degrees on the walls and water served in glass tumblers, not plastic. She wore a slate gray blazer over a black dress, her natural hair color restored, her makeup subtle but resolute. Gone was the trembling bride in layers of tulle. In her place sat a woman who had peeled herself out of a gilded cage and walked into the fire willingly, just to prove she could survive the burn. On the opposite side of the table sat Ryan, visibly wilted, with his tie loosened and his posture slouched. Beside him, Patricia looked as unbothered as ever, her lips pursed in mild disdain, legs crossed at the knee like this was nothing more than a tedious boardroom negotiation. Their lawyer, a sharp-chinned man with silver cufflinks, opened the conversation with a rehearsed, vaguely apologetic tone. Ms. Miller, we're here in good faith. My clients are prepared to offer a private settlement and a mutual non-disparagement agreement, contingent upon the return of all wedding gifts, jewelry, and the deletion of any footage related to the unfortunate disruption. Bailey folded her hands over her lap and let the silence stretch. Then she tilted her head. Interesting, she said. Because I brought a counteroffer. She gestured toward the manila envelope resting beside her lawyer. In here are emails from Patricia to Diana, urging her to appear. Text messages from Ryan begging Diana to stay quiet until after the honeymoon. Copies of the prenup your team tried to force through at the last minute. And a copy of the live stream footage that captured it all. Diana in red. The slideshow. Patricia's exact words. Shall I read them aloud? Patricia shifted uncomfortably. Ryan's complexion turned ashen. Their attorney adjusted his tie. Bailey continued. Here's what I want, a public statement clearing my name. All gifts to be donated to the women's shelter I volunteer with. A formal retraction of any professional complaints made to the Sullivan Foundation. And in return? I'll agree not to sue for defamation, emotional distress, and public humiliation. This is outrageous, Patricia snapped, but Bailey didn't flinch. No. What's outrageous is ambushing someone during their wedding reception with their fiancé's ex, a slideshow of betrayal, and a prenup disguised as an engagement gift. The lawyer raised a hand. Let's take 5 minutes. The room cleared except for Bailey and her legal counsel. When the Sullivans returned, their demeanor had shifted. Ryan looked like a man defeated. Patricia was still composed, but the cracks had begun to show. We accept, their lawyer said stiffly. Under the condition that this remains confidential. Outside the legal parties. Bailey leaned back in her chair. Mutual confidentiality. No smearing. No backroom rumors. No rewriting the story. Agreed, he replied. She stood slowly, extending her hand not to Patricia or Ryan, but to the mediator. Thank you for your time. As she turned to leave, Patricia reached for her wrist, the way one might out of habit when power used to be effortless. Bailey didn't recoil. She just looked down at the perfectly manicured fingers attempting to grasp her. You don't get to touch me anymore, she said, her voice soft but firm. You tried to turn me into something I'm not. And for a while, I let you. But that ends today. She walked out of that room taller than I'd ever seen her. Not because she'd won a legal battle, but because she'd reclaimed something far more valuable, her voice, her name, her story. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't performing for anyone. She was simply herself. 6 months after the wedding that never was, Bailey's life looked nothing like it had before. She left our hometown without hesitation, trading the suffocating familiarity of social expectations for a 1-bedroom apartment 2 blocks from mine in Denver. She returned to teaching, not at her old school, but at a progressive academy where students called her Miss B, and she wore sneakers instead of heels. She let her roots grow back, chopped off the processed blonde, and stopped contouring her face into something she wasn't. We started a Sunday night ritual, alternating between homemade pasta nights and trying every taco truck in the city. We'd laugh, sip wine, talk about everything and nothing. Sometimes, we fell silent mid-meal, not because we had nothing to say, but because we both finally felt safe enough to just be. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast golden light across her kitchen counter, Bailey raised a glass. To catastrophes that save us, she said. I raised mine in return. To rebuilding from rubble. She grinned. To sisters who watch the house burn down and say, at least now we can see the stars. I didn't correct her. Didn't remind her how long I'd stayed away or how many calls I'd let go unanswered in the past. It didn't matter now. We were rebuilding, not just her life, but our bond. Our mother called weekly, quieter now, careful with her words, learning, slowly, how damaging constant comparison had been. Our father, once distant and distracted, became Bailey's most vocal defender, telling every relative within earshot that his daughter had walked away from a dynasty with dignity intact. Even Jessica, once just a college friend, evolved into something closer to family, the maid of honor who became a sister in crisis. Ryan tried once more, sending a terse email about closure and unfinished conversations. Bailey didn't reply. Some doors don't deserve to be opened again. She donated every wedding gift she was legally allowed to. She sent handwritten thank you cards to vendors who'd shown her kindness in the aftermath. She even mailed back Patricia's heirloom ring, not out of obligation, but to prove she'd never needed it in the first place. One afternoon, I found her scrolling through an online course catalog. Photography, she said without looking up. I always wanted to learn. Mom said it wasn't practical. I smiled. She said the same thing when I quit my job and moved here. Bailey finally looked at me. She was wrong about both of us. We sat in silence, a quiet filled with shared understanding, the kind of peace that only comes after every mask is torn off and the raw, real version of yourself finally gets to breathe. The thing about watching someone else's life fall apart, especially when it's someone you've loved, envied, resented, and ultimately chosen again, is that it changes you, too. You see the cracks in your own walls. You remember the places you've been to please others. You feel the ache of your own silences. And sometimes, from that place, a new story begins. One not built on obligation or image or inherited shame, but truth. So if you've ever sat on the other side of the screen and watched someone's world unravel, wondering what you would have done differently, here's your reminder: you're not too late. The story isn't over. Not for them. Not for you. And if your life has ever looked perfect from a distance while secretly collapsing at the core, know this: sometimes the shattering is the beginning, not the end. Sometimes the best version of you lives just beyond the wreckage. Thank you for watching, listening, witnessing. Drop a comment below if you've ever found freedom inside your own disaster. And don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the people who seem like the messiest are the ones most worth listening to.